Welcome to Building Recovery and Compassion Without Fatigue, a part of the 2023 Wellbeing Series. A few C&E disclosures before you get started. The Hawaii State Center for Nursing is accredited as a provider of nursing continuing professional development by the American Nurses Credentialing Centers Commission on Accreditation. The Hawaii State Center for Nursing designates this activity for a maximum of 1 contact hour. To receive credit for this activity, participants must complete 100% of the learning activity and complete an evaluation form. Please remember to print or save your certificate upon completion of the evaluation. Your certificate will no longer be available once you close the window. This activity is non-clinical and is exempt from identifying, mitigating, and disclosing relevant financial relationships. These enduring materials are set to expire on December 31st, 2025. Please note that this presentation was previously recorded. Please disregard any reference to historical dates. Learner outcomes. By the end of this presentation, participants will be able to understand the internal and external barriers to well-being that nurses face in current healthcare settings, articulate their current emotional state, and set intentions for moving towards recovery. Develop practices that allow you to move from frenzy to flow and step closer to flourishing as a nurse.
My name is Chris. I am a nurse. Happy Valentine's Day. How cool is it that we're doing this on Valentine's Day? I hope that this time just becomes a gift for you. I am a nurse, just like many of you. I don't know if we have non-nursing, but I'm going to speak from the heart of a nurse today. So please forgive me every time I say nurse. If you're not a nurse, that it includes you, right? Because I really believe that caregivers fall into this basket that we're talking about today. I've been a nurse for over 20 years, and I think today I really want to just offer some ideas, some practices that can help us all, including me, walk towards some recovery, some healing, maybe some laughter, whatever you sort of need right now, okay? And so the invitation is to really just be here. You have a lot on your plate. You have lots of things to pay attention to, lots of things that you have to care for, right? And now this time is just an hour. Can we just, for now, I have nowhere else to be. I'm meant to be here. I want you guys to kind of feel what it feels like to put yourself on your care list. That is good for us today, right? And just kind of set it down. Just listen. Listen to what's going to serve you. Some of the things you may like, some of the things aren't for you. That's okay. I really just want to honor that you also need to be cared for. So I'm hoping we could check in. I pulled up the chat. I'm hoping we can check in real quick to see who's arrived. So just throw in your first name, perhaps, and maybe your role if you want to, how long you've been in it if you want to. But what about why you're here? Like 1 or 2 words that kind of describe why you came today, or kind of what you're hoping for, maybe. I won't be able to read them all, but I would love to get a sense of who's here. And I think you can chat. Maybe I shouldn't have assumed that. Oh, chat disabled. Chat is disabled.
They can answer it in the Q&A section if they want to.
Okay. Do you want to put something in the Q&A section?
Sorry, and I think I undisabled the chat.
Perfect. Let's play with it. Somebody type something in the chat, see how it goes. Yay, it's working. Hey, hi, hi Rose. Perfect. Good to see some names, some self-care. Aloha, Susie. Self-care. Ideas to take to myself. Thank you, Stephanie. Help avoid burnout. Awesome. Lots of self-care. I like the self-awareness, balance. Beautiful. It's good to have everybody here. We're all needing a little of that care, right? Amber's been a nurse for 10 years. That's awesome. Oh, I saw 40 years. Amazing. Okay, thank you for participating. Let's kind of dive in, right? Let's see where we can head together. I really want to share sort of my goals. Maybe it's not really goals, it's more hopes for today. It's this idea that can we collectively kind of slow down, right? As a profession, just take a breath together. Think about how we can build into recovery to what we're already doing. And I think if there's some simple things that we can do, I think gently is really important because we have been really functioning in a state of stress for a while. And it can be really hard to remember a different way of doing things, a different way of showing up, a different way of being. But I believe there is one, and I believe we have it. We have it within us. We just need to think about some new patterns, some new ways of being to access our sort of that natural self where we know compassion and care and knowing why we do this and having meaning behind our work. It's all within us, right? We've just had to step away for a little bit. And so now I'm hoping we can step back towards it. And I think it's important to call that out because so many things happen in our system when we're experiencing stress, which we've been going through. There's all these physiological changes in how our heart beats differently, how we breathe differently, how our hormones respond, right? And those are all meant to keep us safe, right? Cortisol, adrenaline, they're not bad. We need them. But when that system is activated over and over, it goes from life-saving to maladaptive, right? And it goes from maladaptive to eventually being health damaging. So the level of stress that we've been experiencing can affect our brain structure, right? I would love to measure nurses' amygdalas right now to see how big they are, right? Because of the stress that we've been under. But it affects our immune system, it affects our hormonal system, everything's different. And it's not just us, it's sort of the whole world that has changed because of the stress. So we literally live in a different world, and we're still trying to care for them. So what can we do, right? What can we do different? Because I want to change the narrative today. I want to talk about realistically where we're at, but then what do we do next, right? And recovery starts with us. We cannot wait for the world to change. We cannot wait for staffing to get better. We cannot wait for disease to take a break. We have to really, I believe, begin in the midst of all that if we really want to flourish again, if we really want to walk towards something different. And to flourish, even that might be, I don't know, is it realistic to say that I can flourish as a nurse? I think we should try. I think we should try and get closer for sure. I really like to look at this. I like how Mark Chernoff says that the ideal, right, is to grow stronger day by day so that eventually nothing on the outside, nothing around me, nothing that's happening to in the world, in my space, right, can affect me on the inside, my inner peace, my wellness, unless I consciously give it permission to. I mean, that's like the ideal human state, right? That I flow through life, that it doesn't matter what's going on around me, that I choose what I accept, how I deal with it, how I manage, how I show up. It'd be really cool, right? So let's talk about how we begin. Well, first step, level set. I like to start with just debunking this sort of idea that we're superheroes. And I know during the pandemic, nurses are superheroes. I kind of stepped into that and I kind of liked it and I had some pride around it. But really, eventually I settled in, well, I'm not actually a superhero, right? I'm actually a human doing these really incredibly hard things. And somehow just putting a superhero cape on me took away from that, right? What we had to see, what we have to manage on a day-to-day basis, both the physical demands of our job, but then also the emotional demands of the role, right? Those are really hard things. And we have to understand how we have that narrative and tell those stories, right? Because every time we hear another person's story, become part of another person's life, it becomes part of who we are, right? For better or for worse. And it's not always negative. We have these incredible jobs, right? We get to do and see amazing things and have moments of healing and see miracles, right? But there's a really complex part of it too, because we're dealing with people who are vulnerable and they feel out of control, and how they respond to that loss of control and pain or fear or whatever they're immersed in, right? We have to also respond to. We have to step in, walk towards them, and help them. And I love the way that Rachel Rimmen, who is very much in the resiliency work, reminds us that we have to pay attention to ourselves too. That if we think that we can be immersed in this suffering, this stress, and that it not affect us, that's not really realistic, right? as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. So let's do some self-awareness. Let's start with sort of where we're at, okay? And I've done this this sort of continuum with a few of on the call, but I think it's time, right, for ourselves, but also collectively as a profession, how we can do this. So this continuum really is adapted from Laura McGladrey, who is in Boulder, Colorado, and she actually adapted it from the military's work on PTSD, which we all know statistically, right, that we are having our own fair share of post-traumatic stress disorder as well. So let's just look at this. Just kind of breathe through this. This is the goal. The ideal state is flourishing again, right? And so how do we look at that? What does flourishing mean? These are I adapted this from Laura, so some of these are my ideas, some of these are hers ideas, right? But it doesn't matter because it's you, right? What does flourishing mean to you? So create your own story, create your own narrative. But for me, right, I'm connected to purpose when I'm flourishing. I have practices that help my physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health. And maybe not even know them, but actually do them, right? Take time for them. I have room for complexity, meaning when I have the capacity and I'm flourishing, I can sit in a space with somebody who believes something completely different from me. And the words they're saying are things that I don't think are right or don't, I think they're blatantly wrong, all of those things. But I can sit with that person and still feel compassion, still listen, still have the capacity to hold them in their beliefs, right? And when I'm not flourishing, when I'm less flourishing, right, I sometimes lose that ability and that capacity. I start to get judgy. I start to get reactive, those kind of things. But I can also feel gratitude. I'm feeling vitality. I'm having healthy sleep. Those are all really important, right? And so it can sort of look like this and maybe sound like this. I say things like, I'm looking forward to this, or this is challenging, but I'm okay. I can do it. I can say, I'm starting to get a little drained. When I'm flourishing, I know that I need to recharge and I have a plan for it. And again, I can look at somebody and say, I can see your point, right? So what happens? We go down the continuum. What happens if we start to get tired? Well, we lose interest. I lose interest. I get my fuses shorter. I start to cut corners. I get reactive, right? I get cynical. I kind of get sarcastic. That's sort of my thing that shows up, right? So it could sound like this. I don't know. I'm not feeling like myself. I'm just holding on. Oh, I'm so tired of wearing a mask. I'm just not going to do it, right? And nurses especially, we have huge self-critics. That showed up when I was doing my PhD study, that, I get tired and all of a sudden it's my fault. I'm not doing enough. I need to do more, right? That's how we can kind of show up in those times. The next two, we really need to pay attention to. Wounded is the next scale, the next step that they talk about. And we start to see some physical and psychological effects to this, that we have some sleep issues. We start to feel burnout and get disengaged and just feel exhausted. We tend to isolate ourselves, especially as nurses, because we don't want to be a burden on somebody else, right? So it can sound like this. I can't handle this. Where does the sacrifice end? I actually heard a new grad nurse stand up in a room full of experienced nurses in the middle of COVID and say, when have I given enough? How much more is going to be expected of me in this profession? And there wasn't a really good answer other than, it's hard, but we got you, right? We're going to hold you up. You have a community that's going to surround you. That was really the answer. Nobody understands. Have you ever been too busy to ask for help? Yeah, me too, right? The critical we can't ignore. This is when we're really starting to see it affect our well-being. So we can experience insomnia and hopelessness and these things that show up, right? And it could sound like this. What I do doesn't matter. I don't know who I am. I give up. How many of our colleagues have gotten to that place where they just give up? Can't do it. So after I share this slide, I always like to go, okay, hold on, take a breath. Because I really want to, yes, we have to be real. Yes, these scales are purposeful. They kind of tell us where we're at in a moment, right? But we also can get lost in them because it's a continuum for a reason. We ebb and flow as humans. I can say I've probably said all of those things at some point over the last 3 years. And it's important to realize that I have had some flourishing within that I have just been fatigued and been able to get out of it, right? That I have had a community that surrounded me, that I'm proud of what I was able to do and how we showed up. I'm proud of our profession and how the profession showed up. So awareness is really good, and honest reflection about where we at is really good because it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, now what do I need, right? How can I pause? How can I ask a different question? How can I take my own breath? And so let's do that together, right? Because I really believe that we can be the authors of a new story of care. I have personally been studying resiliency and theory-guided practices in caring science, honestly, since about my 3rd year as a nurse. I'm a pediatric nurse by trade. And right out of the bat, I had a patient that I cared for that I got really close to. Took care of her for 3 years, right? Really, as a new grad, she scared me to death. But I got to know her, and she was really complex, and she had a lot of pain, and she had a lot of issues. And she's lived at the hospital because nobody could care for her outside of that intensity of care. We had several foster families try to take her home. One family brought her back in an hour and just sort of handed her back and said, "We can't do this," right? So we said, "You're home," right? She came back to us. She was also a really hard nut to crack because she had so many things going on that, you couldn't really get her to laugh or smile. It was really hard to do, and she just wasn't really interested. But funny part of her is that we actually discovered that if you sang the hokey pokey, she would belly laugh. So just imagine this nonverbal little girl, all these complexities. There's a whole team of people, nurses and doctors and RTs and everybody surrounding her crib, really, and, turning all about to see if we could get her to laugh because that's how special it was. And my family actually got into foster care to take Jenny home. So she started my journey of being a foster family. And I tell you, this little nonverbal girl would touch your face and your heart would melt, right? But 6 months after we started to foster care, she had a surgery and didn't recover from it. And she died in my arms in our pediatric intensive care unit, surrounded by my family. Her family was there. Her nursing family was there. And it was devastating, right? We all have those stories. We all have those things we carry in our heart. And so needless to say, I struggled. I almost left the profession because of it. Because I felt, well, I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable of doing this. I care too much. My heart's too weak, all those things that we tell ourselves. And there was still a sense of me, though, that I was meant to be a nurse, that I was supposed to do that this was my calling. So instead of leaving the profession, I started to study. I got my hands on everything I could to learn about resiliency and theory and what do I need and how can I stay a generous, kind nurse and not give my whole self away. I ended up getting my master's in education. I did my PhD studying compassion fatigue. I, along the way, had to figure out the ways that sustain me so that I could be a whole person, right? And have enough to freely give to patients without feeling empty or kind of drained. And so I learned from lots of amazing people in the field. And I sort of created my own, well, this is what they're all kind of saying, right? This list of summary. And I want to share that with you, right? The first thing that I know for myself is that we have to treat our energy, what we draw from, as this precious commodity, right? And we have to treat it as a precious commodity. We all start off with a certain amount of energy at the beginning of the day, at the beginning of the week, and it will slowly tick away naturally, right? So we have to know what pulls it from us. We have to also know what fills us back up. If all we do is focus on what drains us and we don't have the ability to pause and slow down and get some energy, right? We'll be on the ending lose of this equation. So these are the questions for you, really, as I list these. How do you manage your energy? What does drain you? What fills you up? And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe grab some paper. So we're going to do something with some paper in a minute. So these are some questions you can write down for yourself. You have some time, but grab some paper. So the next thing is right relation. And this is one that I will continue to work on probably the rest of my life, right? But right relation really means, for me, it's about the best parts of me, my values, my intentions, my heart. They all get to show up in a moment, okay? When I'm connected to who I'm meant to be, and I can say, I authentically showed up, right? That's how I know I'm in right relation. And when I'm in right relation with myself, guess what? It can be expanded to be in right relation with others, be in right relation with my profession, be in right relation with my source that fills me up, that thing that's greater than me. Even honestly being in right relation with the world, right? Because I understand that ripple effect of who I am authentically sends out this new potential that can turn things towards the things I want to do, like love and compassion and dignity, and takes away from the things I don't like fear, hate, and judging, right? The next thing that I've learned really importantly about is grittiness. So grittiness, I don't have to teach to nursing especially, but we do want to qualify it, right? Because grit means this combination of persistence and passion, right? So not just because there's bad grit, you can show up over and over and over again, but be in survival mode, not sure why you're still coming in, unable to show up how you want to show up, right? And it can be harmful for yourself and for others. But when you can match your persistence, that grit, with your passion, your calling, and then you have the ability to do it over and over, right? It's such an incredible gift. And that's what nursing did during the pandemic. We held up the entire world. Just look at all the evidence, right? So I want to celebrate and take credit for those times that we were able to do that, right? It's really important. We have to know our why. So purpose is really key. If we don't know our why, we lose the reason for our work. And it's so important for us and also the people we're caring for, right? Compassion fatigue it's not just the effect that on the people that we're trying to care for, right? It's that inability to care, but also the suffering we feel because of it. So compassion fatigue is not something that just happens. It builds over time. It's not, you don't clock out, right, and go, oh, I'm done with compassion fatigue. No, it's like a cloak. I've heard it described as a cloak that we wear, and it kind of get heavier and heavier, right? But when we remember our purpose, our calling to this work, it lightens that weight because we do it. There's meaning behind the things that we do. And even though they're hard, we know it's making a difference in a unique way that other people aren't doing. And then the last thing that is so important is our community. We really need others who help sustain us when we can't do it ourselves. That's our calling to the covenant with the world, right? That will sustain you until you can sustain yourself. We also need that. People who care need to be cared for. People who listen need to be listened to. And I don't know of any other community that understands nursing than other nurses, right? So we have to figure that out. Who is that for ourselves? The people who know what you're going through, the people next to you in the code, right? In the trenches, doing all the, honestly, some of the distasteful and sometimes disgusting tasks we have to complete, right? My tribe understands what I've been through. And just by telling our stories and having somebody say, yeah, me too, I struggle with that too, or I've experienced that too, that helps sustain us, right? So think about this list. Just look at it. See what makes sense to you. Erase what doesn't have meaning for you, right? This isn't I'm telling you, right? I'm inviting you in because you have to make your own list. You have to figure out what's most important for you. But remember, you deserve to flourish. So how can you get there, right? How can you change your story? How can you write your own story? This is your book. This is your life. How do you want it to go? And what do you need to pay attention to are really important questions. Okay, so let's jump into some practices. We're doing really good. When I think about how to get to the things that are on that list, one of the things, and if you know me for any amount of time, you're going to hear me say that pausing to care. Pausing to care is sort of the simplest thing we can do in a moment that gives us the space to do all the things for me on that list, right? I get to check in on my energy. I get to check and make sure I'm in right relation with myself. I get to set an intention, right? It's when I have those meaningful moments to slow down, my mind quiets, I can connect to my heart, I can set an intention. I can just notice, right? Differently. So, and I can stop and pause and say, what do I need right now? When your focus is what do others need, and that's your only focus, we will eventually lose that capacity to do to show up how we want to show up, right? So it's just a simple, what do I need right now? Maybe it's a breath, maybe it's a drink of water, maybe it's supplies that I forgot, maybe it's to set down what I just heard in the room next door, right? So that I can be present in this room. But it gives you that opportunity to do that. And so what does it do? All kinds of things. It settles us, lets our heart and brain connect, right? I love this. Gene Watson says this, that when you slow down meaningful, it allows your soul to catch up with you. It's kind of a beautiful image, right? That we do get so busy and we just go, that who we are authentically, and that deeper part of us needs to catch up. It invites a new energy from frenzy to flow. Frenzy to flow. Frenzy, you know what frenzy is. We live in frenzy. What if we know we can't change the frenzy necessarily, but what if you showed up differently in it? What if, as things were happening around you, you found yourself flowing within it instead of fighting against it or reacting to it, right? That you stepped back and had a practice to invite some different energy. Then we can respond instead of react. And so importantly, we can repattern this moment. Gene Watson talks about this all the time, that, just imagine if there's frenzy in a space and I bring frenzy with me, we're just frenzying ourselves, right? But if there's frenzy and I invite calm, peace, slowing down, intention, the opportunity is that they come towards that. And that is where that level, that peaceful place, that calm place, that settled place, just even a place to take a breath, is where the best parts of ourselves and our patients show up. It's kind of a neat idea, right? So how do you pause? Ask yourself that. What does pause look like to you? And how can you do it in the midst of everything that's happening instead of, I'll get to that, I'll wait for that, I'm off tomorrow, I'll pause then. That's great. Pause on your day off, reset. But what about during? Can you change from frenzy to flow? So one of the ways that we do this is this big question about our purpose, right? And what grounds us. And I think we just need to pause. I don't want to spend tons of time on this, but we do need to pause as a profession, right? The pandemic really shook us to our core. And as we emerge from that, I'm really hoping that we're redefining ourselves within these sort of medical models that we found ourselves a part of. I'm not saying they're bad, but we used to be healers, right? We used to be caregivers that showed up with you in your hour of need, regardless of what was going on. And sometimes I wonder if we've sort of been reduced as a profession instead of honoring what the discipline of nursing was meant to be. No, it's a good question, right? I mean, a profession is a group of people with a skill set, but I think it's hard to describe the art of nursing, right? Which the ANA just actually added to our who we are, right? That there's an art to what we do. But it's hard to do that and find that even in our job descriptions, because they so often leave out the nursing value and the purpose. I mean, where in your JD did it say that you were going to be holding the hand of a dying patient so they weren't alone when they were transitioned? Or how about just that you need to put a smile on your face as you clean an incontinent patient because you want to give them some dignity. So you say, oh, it's okay. And this doesn't bother me. And I'm happy to help, even though on the inside, right, you're trying not to gag. I think as a discipline, we hold unique values. And we have this understanding that we treat the whole person, that not just a disease, that we live in a holistic universe, right? That we're not separate from each other. We're not separate from we can't separate our mind from our body and our body from the spirit. Everything affects everything, right? So how do we allow those sort of timeless values that our theorists are really talking about and have guided us throughout the years? How do we let that guide our practice? Right? I think it would maybe keep us off the assembly line approach to care where we focus more on throughput than we do on humanity. And allow us to be that compassion in action, right? To see suffering and want to do something about it. Okay, so what is unique to the discipline of nursing for you? What are your timeless values? What does ground you? For me, it's these. It's our history. It's going back, right? Florence Nightingale's philosophy and teaching of that we have to use our heart, our hands, and our brain, right, to create that healing environment. And she was fierce in her convictions around that, right? And caring science really grounds me because it helps me remember that I'm supposed to bring my heart into these moments, into these, and be authentically present and infuse loving kindness, right, for self and other to create that healing environment. To ask different questions, to slow down so my soul can catch up, all those things. And at Queen's Medical Center, right, we have somebody that we follow too. Queen Emma understood what caring meant, right? That you went to where their suffering was and you stepped in. You showed up to anyone who needed care, regardless of who they were, what they needed. You simply show up. So it's important to understand, right, who inspires you, what grounds you, so that you're that you have that place, right? If I have a foundation to stand on, even if the world is moving, I'm going to be solid, right? And if you're not sure, that's okay, right? If theorists aren't your jam, that's okay. But look for those things. Like, find somebody that helps you understand the uniqueness of what you do and how you're contributing to this worldview, right? That we're meant to care, that we sustain others when they can't sustain themselves. Okay, that's homework for you. But then let's pause again. Because, hey, Chris, I thought you said we were just going to take better care of ourselves. That's true. And the practice of you taking care of yourself goes beyond just those simple acts, right? It actually becomes really profound because you as a whole nurse shows up differently, right? And that's actually one of the things I really like about caring science, because it doesn't ask you to change, right? It's not saying you're broken. It's saying, what do you need, right? It's just this invitation to be more of who you're meant to be, so that you have the capacity to do all the things that we've talked about, to answer that call, right? When somebody cares, to have the ability to show up how you want to show up. So it is important. And I also love turtles, so we need to hang out with turtles more. People who know me know I'm obsessed. Okay, so now you need a piece of paper. And I know I forgot to tell you at the beginning, so it's okay. So take a second. Grab something. You don't need a big piece of paper. You don't need anything fancy to write with. But we're going to do this exercise. And again, those of you who've known me may have done this already. You're going to jump in again. It's going to be okay. Because you always learn something new when you slow down and do these practices again. So here it is. This practice is all about a tree. Some of you are like, I know this practice. I can do it in my sleep. That's good. That means I'm doing my job. So on your piece of paper, do me a favor and just draw a tree. It does not have to be as fancy as this tree, but just draw a tree. I'm not going to give you tons of time. So for those of you that want a perfect tree, you might have to redo it afterwards. I know, nurses, you're perfectionist souls. Okay. So put your pencil down and just look at your tree. I'm imagining that everybody has the trunk of a tree, right? And everybody has something growing off the top of it, right? Some leaves or branches or something. Probably about half of you put a little squirrel hole, because why would I have a tree if I didn't build it for somebody else, to sustain somebody else? You are my people. You are nurses for sure. If we were in a room, I would look and ask to see how many of you drew roots to your tree, right? No instructions to, so you didn't do it wrong, but roots are important to a tree, right? They provide nutrients, they provide stability. If the root system is not healthy, the tree is going to suffer, right? But it's often underneath the ground, so we don't see the root system. Agreed? So we're going to work through this tree. I want you to add some roots to the bottom of your tree now. So just whatever that means to you, just draw some lines, ground your tree. Some of you started over. That's okay too. I see you. And we're going to really treat this exercise in 3 sections: the root system, the trunk, and then the top of the tree. Okay. But to begin, I want you to write on somewhere on your piece of paper, I matter. I know it's cheeky, but it's true. You matter. And who you are and what you do matters. And so this exercise is the I matter tree. So somewhere write I matter. Okay, so let's start in the roots. Like I said, the roots, kind of imagine what you think, how important the roots are for what does it represent in a tree. So it's nutrients, it's groundedness, it's foundation, it's, in aspen trees, the roots are all connected. So they're really actually one large organism, right? So it connects us. It connects the tree to the earth and others. In the I matter tree, it's actually going to represent your unique gifts. So think about and start listing all your gifts, all your talents. This is the I am statement. I am compassionate, smart, organized, giving, wicked smart. Just start to list all your talents and gifts. Don't be shy. Think about all the skills you do. Who are the nurses that are good at access? And I can get an IV from the door. My thing was metaports. Oh, I loved accessing metaports. And I got good at it. I also want you to think about this from other lenses as well. So I want you to think about your colleagues, your peers, your fellow nurses, your fellow whatever that you work with, if your fellow educators, whatever your role is. And think about what they would say your gifts and talents are, and write a couple things from their perspective. You're such a good listener. You always support me. You make me laugh. What do they seek you out for? Okay, one more perspective. What about the people who love you and adore you more than anybody in this world, right? Your friends, your family, your significant others, your dogs, your cats, right? The people that they light up when you walk towards them. What would they say your gifts and talents are? What do you bring them? Just always there for us. You work so hard. You're so giving and understanding and patient. What would they say about you? Write those down. Okay, so kind of sit your pen down, take a deep breath. Just look at that list. We rarely, unless we're being interviewed and asked what our strengths are, we rarely take time to think about what we do and who we are and how we show up and everything that we bring with us, right? So look at that list and let it sink into your heart. Don't block it. Don't be like, oh, you wish you were. No, it's who you are. It's an incredible gift what you bring to this world. And then on top of that, to your profession, because you bring all those gifts with you every time you have an encounter with somebody else, every time you teach, every time you care, every time you walk into a space where, an environment where you're creating that energy. That's what you bring with you. It's pretty incredible. Okay, so let's move on to the trunk of the tree. Trunk is also very important to a tree. It's stability, it's growth, it's support, it's how the nutrients get to the top of the tree, right? So it transfers things. In the I matter tree, it's actually going to stand for what you stand for. Okay, so somewhere by the trunk of your tree, on your tree, it doesn't matter, wherever you want to do, write, I stand for. And then you're going to finish that statement by thinking about those things in your world that are really important to you, right? That are values, that are core beliefs, that are foundational for you, that when they don't occur, right, it causes you to be frustrated, it causes you fear, it causes, right? If you can't have that, it's not okay with you, right? So, and it can be a value, it can be an action, it can be, mine typically is compassion, right? I stand for compassion. I believe when you see somebody else suffer, you're meant to do something about it, right? So I stand for compassion. It can be things like I stand for equality, justice, love, faith, family, hope. Like, what are those things that bubble up to the surface for you when you say what you stand for? And just write it out. I stand for. And please, now that we have our chat up and running, will you put it in there for me? Will you put I stand for and just the 1 or 2 words that you chose so that we can collectively again see this profession, this discipline of nursing, what's important to us? Honesty and teamwork, love it. Honesty, respect, hope, peace, love, equality. Christine got all of them in there. Hope, integrity, compassion, love and hope, truth, honesty, loyalty, hard work, love, unity, community, whoosh, compassionate connections, authenticity, protector, integrity. Anybody else just get goosebumps from that? Right? Like, no wonder that we were, Susie got them all too. Faith, love, family, righteousness, respect. I love it. Is it any wonder, right, that we sustained the world when it needed us most? That we showed up and said, we got you. And we showed up in love and hope. Cheryl says collaborative process, and I can attest to that's who she is. Love that. Yeah, what we stand for is really important, right? And what we stand for as a discipline is inspiring. So remember that. Those times when you're like, why am I still here? Why am I doing this? Right? Remember those things. They can hold us up when we need them to, right? Empower. I like that, Colette. Okay, let's get to the top of the tree, because this is the fun part. This is the part where I ask you what you need in order to flourish. So what do I need to flourish? You have all these unique gifts and talents that you bring to the world. You have these incredible inspirational things that you stand for and that you bring to the world. What do you need to be able to live that out? So this is the I need space. I need nutrition. Think about yourself as a whole person. What do you need physically? What do you need mentally? Those are great. Those are, physical and mental health are so important. But I want you to go a little bit deeper. I want you to think about what you need emotionally. What do you need spiritually? What is going to sustain you? What's your source? What's that thing that's bigger than you that you need access to? Write it on the top of your I am going to, right? I'm going to journal. I'm going to connect with my community. I'm going to read a book that has nothing to do with anything other than just to help me escape, right? I'm going to find time to breathe. What is it for you? Fill the top of the tree with so many things that you have lots of options when it's time for you to slow down. And I love that you're listing them in the chat too. Hana is so important. Meditate. Time to process. Yeah, permission. Maybe that's it, Cheryl. Permission to give self-care, right? To get into the ocean. I love that. Quietness. Steal from each other. Yeah, I do good when I walk amongst the trees too. right? Love it. Leanne's got it figured out. Love that. All those things. Time for yourself. Laugh. Enjoy life. When was the last time you were just completely at peace and ease and you just allowed yourself to laugh? Laura's going after it. She's chasing laughter. Me too. Okay. So maybe take a second and just set your pin down and look at this exercise for what it is, right? Because in a few moments, we answer some pretty important questions. Going back to that, how do I manage my energy? How do I know my purpose? How do I get in right relation? It sort of all lives on this piece of paper. Because I continue to grow my gifts and my talents. Nurses are lifelong learners, right? We're always going to be adding skills, adding knowledge, adding practices. And then we're generous. And, you know, somebody said, I want to find some things for my team, right? Like, we're always looking for ways to expand our gifts and share our gifts and freely give our talents away. When we lose our purpose, when we lose that sort of, why am I doing this? Can I continue to do this? If we go back to what we stand for, even in just a moment, right? Like Dr. Watson said, in a moment, let your soul catch up. Set an intention. Remember why you're there. And does that make everything perfect? No, because nursing is so complex that you can show up perfectly and the person isn't able to receive. Right? They are not able to understand that you're there to care. They can't muster up gratitude to give you the things that you deserve, right? But when you can fall back on it, that's okay, because compassion doesn't demand that of you. Compassion asks me to show up and make a difference where I can. I can fall back on that and it'll catch me every single time. And it doesn't mean that it won't be hard. It doesn't mean that I won't get drained. It doesn't mean any of that. But it allows me to stay up, right? It allows me to continue. It allows me to help others, all of those things. And then that top of the tree, man, post it, put it up somewhere. Think about how you can infuse those in your days off, during your days when you're at work. I've already talked about turtles. I'm obsessed with them, right? Because they are this perfect picture of what frenzy to flow looks like, right? It does not matter what the sea looks like or how long it takes them to get from the beach to the ocean, or how rocky the waves are. They get in there, they step in, they lean towards it, and they allow themselves to flow within it, right? So it doesn't matter how rocky our seas are, because I know I'm going to be okay. Love it. Okay. Makes sense? Can you post this somewhere for yourself? Please take this exercise and do it with other people in teams. It's a fun way to just kind of slow down and connect with yourself. Oftentimes when I do this with teams, I'll ask them to share each other's gifts with each other, right? Like, how cool is it to sit down with somebody and have them tell you you're compassionate or smart or funny, right? It's really cool to do that. Okay, we're winding down a little bit. This is good. But I'm curious, what can be different for you now? So somewhere, another piece of paper, give yourself permission, commit to something. Say, I'm gonna try to do this. I'm gonna try that pause thing throughout my day. I'm gonna think about how I set an intention. I'm gonna just, hey, how about if you just notice when you're in frenzy? That might be completely different. Like, oh, okay, here I am. I'm feeling a little chaotic right now in this moment. That's a huge step, because we're stepping away from that part of our brain and repatterning ourselves by just noticing. That changes things. Take credit for the little things that we do. And then go take a 3-day yoga retreat when you can, with turtles on the beach, because you deserve that too. Okay, I'm just going to do one more question. We can put it in chat, or I don't know if you can talk or not, but maybe not, but put it in chat. just what are you taking away from this time? It's only an hour, just the beginning. I hope it sparks just one thing in you. We'll leave some time for some questions if we can, but what are you taking away? Would you do me a favor and put it in chat? Self-care. I'm not alone. It's okay to pause. Small steps. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, take care of ourselves, filling our cup. It's so hard to remember, isn't it? Right? Taking care of yourselves is really important. Letting go of something I can't control. Stop and breathe, recalibrate. We're not alone. Yeah, please be gentle with yourself along this way too, right? I truly believe that you can't hate yourself into being a better person. It's only through the emotion of love and compassion and self-care and self-compassion that we can change, right? So you're not doing anything wrong. We just need some time, right? And like Naomi said, maybe permission to pause and self-care. I don't know who you need permission from, but it's granted. You have permission, right? Let's give each other permission with that. Okay, so I'm going to end with this poem from Mary Oliver. It's sort of one of my slides I always share because I think this is so true, right? That she says, "Tell me, what is your plan to do with your one wild and precious life? You guys are all precious, and we need all of you. And you deserve, again, and I'll just say it from the highest mountaintop, from the deepest ocean, that you deserve to flourish and thrive just as much as you want your patients to flourish and thrive." So that's what I got. We still have 8 minutes for questions. That's good for me. So I will pause and see. Leanne, maybe you can tell me the best way to do that if anybody has a question.
Yeah, there's the Q&A feature at the bottom menu. You folks can go ahead and use and type in any questions you might have for Chris. Chris, you might also be able to open that Q&A box and see if anybody puts anything in. There was a question earlier in the chat about whether or not we were able to share your PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all in this together, right?
These comments were amazing, by the way. I'm not seeing any questions pop up. Maybe I do see a lot of thank yous in the chat for Chris. We have a question from Jocelyn. Where does worry fall into the picture and how do you control it?
Yeah. It's right in the middle of the picture, right? It is for me. I think that worry is a natural place for humans, and we have access to it pretty easily, right? We can step into it pretty seamlessly. I think how do you control? So much of the things that I try to control, I lose control of, right? So it's sort of permission to allow yourself to worry, to turn towards it with self-compassion and honesty. Like, there it is, there's worry. Of course I'm worried in this moment. What am I worried about, right? And then if we can stay in question mode with ourselves and gentleness with ourselves, we have the opportunity to shift that pattern. So why am I worried, right? What's at the root of this worry? Is it a real worry? Sometimes I worry and I don't need to. Sometimes I pre-worry about things and I'm telling myself a story. So I would say controlling it might not be possible, but taming it might be, right? If you gently turn towards it and allow yourself, right, the time to process it. I hope that's helpful, Thomas. Oh, one book. Amber, you're killing me. One book. Well, you probably aren't looking for a textbook because I'm just going to say anything by Jean Watson, even though she uses language that you have to look up every other word. I think Kristen Neff has some great stuff on self-compassion. Mark Nepo has some great books about slowing down and if you're looking to pause. I think that one of the biggest thing that we have to sort of step into nursing is courage, right? Like having the courage to take care of ourselves, having the courage to live from our values and stand in a place. So anything on courage. So Maya Angelou is a beautiful author that talks about having the courage to live out who you're meant to be. I hope that helps. Yeah, sure. I can give you a whole list of books. It's going to take you like 10 years to read them all, but of course I will do that. Thanks, Thomas, for the question.
Great.
Does somebody have their hand up? I don't know if that's real.
I will take a look. Hold on one second. Somebody does. It's not letting me see who.
Looks like it's Rogelio, maybe? I probably ruined that.
I have unmuted you if you'd like to ask her a question. Oh, maybe her hand is up. His hand is up unintentionally.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. I think you just unmuted yourself. You want to try again?
Okay, well, we can go ahead. If you do
Rose says it might be a high five, so I'm going to give you a high five.
Perfect.
Let's all high five each other.
I like that plan. I would like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. Mostly thank you to Chris for a wonderful presentation, as always.
Thank you very much for all the gratitude. I throw it right back at you. You guys are amazing.
Thank you, everyone. To receive continuing nursing education contact hours, please click the link to the evaluation in the video description below. When the evaluation opens, you will be prompted for a password. Enter the following password, remembering that it is case sensitive. Upon completion of the evaluation, please print or screenshot your certificate. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you at our future events.